Hi there, it's the Rebellious Gem here. Welcome to my channel. I'm pretty sure you're new here because my channel is fairly new and I don't have a lot of followers or people that watch my content. But that's growing. No worries, that's growing. So welcome to my channel. This is actually the weekly version of my blog that I do. If you don't know, I do have a website, rebelliousgem.com, where I feature a weekly version of my blog that I do every week. I release it every Wednesday, almost every Wednesday. Sometimes I take a Wednesday off. But I also like to do a video version of that content as well. So welcome to that video version. This episode or subject is don't out bustle your hustle. So I started out the written content by saying that I realized that title is definitely corny, but I couldn't come up with anything else that kind of conveyed the concept that I was trying to convey. So I do know it's corny, but then I want you to go ahead and ponder this quote, which is the next thing that I went into in my written blog. And I have my laptop here on my lap, so, you know, don't laugh at me for cheating. I have to make sure that I focus. So anyway, the quote is, everything we need to fulfill our true destiny always comes to us at the perfect time. But spiritual awareness is required to recognize those gifts and opportunities. So, you know, I simplified that quote by saying, so that means that basically all of us should be living divinely timed lives because all we need is a little bit of spiritual awareness, right? If only it were that simple. Then I kind of go into, and I didn't realize that this blog post was actually going to be 2 parts until I kind of started going into it and really describing a little bit more of my life journey. I realized that I'm looking at myself rather than looking at the actual camera way over here. But anyway, so, you know, I went into some time describing my journey. That's why it was a little bit longer than I expected it to be. And then I also kind of described just how life can kind of pressure you to mold yourself in a certain way. And you end up not pursuing the things that you actually want to pursue, or getting in touch with your spirit to really find out what it is that you're supposed to be contributing to the world. And that's kind of how it ended up being so lengthy. And so that's kind of what this part 1 is going to be about. I'll go into exactly what I just described, a little bit of my own story, and just kind of how society can force us into these boxes where we don't even really pursue our own passions, our own desires. We think we're pursuing them, but we don't. Anyway, I'll go into that. And then so part 2 next week, I will detail, you know, how I kind of started to begin to climb out of that. I do believe a spiritual journey is a lifelong process. So I'm still alive. So I'm still on a spiritual journey, right? So still learning. I said that to say still learning, still growing, still evolving, still ascending, obviously. But just next week, I will detail a little bit more of how I kind of started to climb out of that hole, and give some practical ways, at least a little bit of advice, whatever advice that I can give. So anyway, it's really not that simple, I don't think. You know, I mean, it kind of depends on what spiritual awareness is for you. In my case, I kind of felt like, I mentioned in one of my earlier videos that I spent a lot of time in Christianity, probably 30 years at least. And I was one of those people that really did spend time studying the Bible. I spent a lot of time reading it, trying to understand it, trying to find ways to apply it to my life. I spent a lot of time in prayer. I mean, I definitely wasn't the kind of person that was, you know, 24/7. But I probably would say that I read my Bible probably at least 4 days out of the week. I was pretty consistent, 60 to 70% of the time with my prayer routine and my reading routine for a long time. So I feel like I had a pretty good understanding of it. And I felt like I was doing all of the right things. I was doing a lot of praying. I was doing a lot of reading the Bible, trying to understand, constantly telling God, going to church, volunteering. I spent a lot of time wanting to find my way through that avenue, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I spent a lot of time in Christianity trying to find that joy, trying to find that peace, trying to find contentment and serenity and, you know, those things that make you feel accomplished, not even accomplished, because anything can make you feel accomplished, right? You can win a medal, you can receive a promotion at a job, those kind of things can make you feel accomplished. And that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about really finding that spiritual connection within. I just felt constantly like it was word vomit. I was always praying to God. And I don't know if you come from that background, but for me, when I initially started meditating, I don't even think I originally called it meditating, because there is such a stigma within Christianity about some of the new age and spiritual things, such as meditation, saging. You know, there's such a stigma that I think for a long time, I didn't even want to pursue anything like that. And it's kind of crazy. Maybe I'll make a separate video about this, but it's kind of crazy some of the imagery that my mind first presented to me when I first started meditating, because I had that Christian background. And I thought I was doing something wrong. That's a whole separate video. Tune in for that. But I'll remember one day to make that video. But it's just kind of crazy, some of the imagery that presented itself, because I had those fears. It's just, you know, a sign, or I feel like I'm gonna have to cut this part out because I'm doing a lot of babbling. But it's just an example of how your mind can work in creating things in your life when that's not even what the situation is. But it's because of what you believe. So anyway, I'll follow up with that video. But I felt like I was doing all of the right things. I was praying all the time, reading my Bible all the time, like I said, volunteering, going to church. Still very unhappy, still didn't feel like I was fulfilling my purpose. I also had a lot of childhood trauma, which I think I've kind of talked a little bit about in other videos, which also I was trying to bury myself out of. And I tried to do that with Christianity quite a bit. And I don't think I knew that, but I think that's why I was like constantly in prayer and stuff like that. It wasn't until I kind of started going more on the spirituality route, where I started understanding shadow work and stuff like that, where I started trying to heal some of that childhood trauma. But I think previously I was attempting to do it through Christianity and through prayer, and trying to absolve myself of, I guess, whatever I thought was sins, or sins that occurred, or things that I thought were sins that occurred as a result of some of that childhood trauma, right? So anyway, I spent a lot of time doing that. I went through, you know, a couple of not that great relationships, and that whole journey. And then I laugh all the time because I don't know if you're familiar with In Living Color, but they have a skit where they talk about Jamaicans and how, I think it's Jamaicans, and how they have so many jobs. Like each person has 5 or 6, 7 jobs. And that's kind of how I felt, you know, in my early adulthood, because I literally have had every type of job, like every type. I've changed oil, I've done fast food, I've done just about every type of job. So anyway, I said that to say that I went through this whole cycle of going through, you know, unsavory jobs and all this whole kind of stuff, and just life, a long time living life until recently, you know, and up until recently. And I can't even say that I struggled until recently, because I was in corporate, you know, over the last about 15 years or so. So I did pretty well once I got into corporate. But anyway, I went through all those jobs. I went to college. I started and stopped college multiple times. It was just so many things that the whole point of me doing that, or going through all of that, I was just trying to find my way. I was trying to find what was going to make me happy, what was going to make my family happy, what I thought I wanted to do with my life, and tried multiple things, failed at multiple things. It was like I could never really truly find my way. I would start something, and then once you get in the thick of it, it's like, this isn't really what I want to do. It's not, I can tell already it's not going to make me passionate. And there were so many things that I did looking to fulfill that passion, and looking to find a way to just quench that thirst to do something with my soul. And I went through that probably for a good 30 years before, and I talked about this already in a video, before I quit my corporate and got into this, where I feel like I'm trying to do something where this is my passion. I'm giving from my heart, I'm creating from my heart, and this is really what I want to do. I'm just going to shake this so it doesn't go black. So anyway, I don't know if you've ever felt like that. You know, I stop and ask, you know, if you've ever, if in my written version, you know, if you've ever felt like that. I know that there are people out there that feel like that, and that's kind of what prompted me to write this content. That's kind of what prompted me to start this whole business. Is, you know, I lived this life in such a way, I lived this life in such a way and unhappy for so long, that once I kind of started to find that joy, once I kind of started to find that centeredness and that peace, and sometimes I wake up just so joyful, and I want to share that, because there's so many people that don't have that. And that's kind of what, what I'm asking. I spent so many years unhappy that it really is my sincerest hope to try to help other people kind of dig out of that, because I know that there are so many people that live that exact same life. They've gone from job to job or relationship to relationship, or, they're miserable within their family. There's so many things that people deal with. And if I can just try to shed a little bit of joy in people's lives, then I feel like what I've done here has been effective. And I feel like, I'm moving within my passion, because all I'm wanting to do is spread joy. All I'm wanting to do is help people lift or uplift or, grow spiritually just by sharing my story. That's all I can do. I'm not a guru or anything like that, but just by sharing my story. And so then, once I kind of outlined in my written version what that person is or what that person looks like, I just went into how I began to draw my way out of that or climb out of that. And that was literally by saying to myself that I needed to STFU, talking to God, and, be still with me and let God tell me what he has for me. And that's how I got into meditation, which I know is meditation. I literally sit every day like this, twice a day, morning and night. But at the time I didn't even want to say that, because again, Christianity gives this such a negative spin that I didn't want to feel at the time like I was doing that. And so I named it, I'm just going to be still with God. I was so tired of telling God what I wanted over and over and over and over for so many years that I finally gotten to the point where I just wanted to be still in God's presence. I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to think anything. I just wanted to see how God communicated with me, like just be still and be quiet. And that's kind of how I got into meditation, which spiraled me on this whole spiritual journey. And how I really and truly started connecting with God. That was another thing that I highlighted in the written version. I never really felt like I truly had connected with God in Christianity or in religion, I'll say, not just Christianity, but, there were slight moments, but there was never a time where I really felt like I could connect with God at any moment or at any given time. Christianity places God outside of you, where you're constantly praying to God and, seeking God outside of you. Meditation kind of teaches you to seek that higher power within you. And that's kind of how that began to grow. And that's when I actually, once I was able to finally settle my mind and work through some of that trauma that I had, which is, that process that I went through is what I'm going to detail next week. But once I started doing that and working through some of that trauma and really being still and starting to recognize my own energy, which was another thing that really helped me on this whole journey, which I'll detail next week as well too. That's when I actually started feeling like I was connecting with God or connecting with spirit or our higher power, whatever label you want to put on that. And so, that's really the crux of what I want to get at. I think there's so many people that are unhappy in the world. And this was another thing that I mentioned in the written version, and I'm a little nervous to say it, but a lot of people that deal with anxiety and depression, I really believe is because they are disconnected from themselves spiritually. Now, don't get me wrong. There's definitely a place for medication. There's definitely people that struggle with mental and, spiritual struggle, mental, spiritual, emotional struggles. I guess not even spiritual, because who can help you with spiritual other than church, right? But that wasn't helping me. So yeah, I know that there are a lot of people that have mental and emotional struggles and that there is a place for medicine. So don't get me wrong. I understand that, but there are a lot of people that feel like they're anxious or feel like they're depressed because they really are just disconnected from themselves. They're disconnected from their true passion. They're living their lives in a way where they're trying to satisfy so many external factors where they haven't really connected within themselves to find what it is that is really going to satisfy them and what's really going to quench their soul. And so that's kind of the point of what I was getting at. So I realized this video is getting a little lengthy. One more thing that I wanted to touch on. I'm already at 13 minutes. Is so many of us are consumed with, trying to get that it. And even if you have it, you're consumed with trying to keep it. And so that's kind of what our life is focused around, is that chase. And that's why we can never sit still long enough to have that time to be with ourselves. That was one of the things that I pointed out. And then to correlate with the title, Don't Out Bustle Your Hustle, you have to really pay attention to the words that we use in our vocabulary every day. And that's when I brought up, you know, these popular phrases like I'm on my grind or I'm out here on my hustle. When you really look at the definitions of these terms, you have to be careful of the words that you're adopting and the words that you're applying over your life, because if you don't know, now you know, that we really do create our reality with our spoken words. And so we have to be careful with what it is that we're speaking over our lives. And so I just wanted to tell you, you know, not even tell you, but give you an example real quick of the definitions of the two words grind and hustle. Grind is to reduce something to small particles or powder by crushing it, to wear it smooth or to sharpen it, abrasion, to sharpen by abrasion or friction, to rub or cause to rub together gratingly, to reduce to fine particles as by pounding or crushing. Bray, triturate or pulverize. Triturate, Triturate. I don't know how you say that. But yeah, that's the definition of grind, you know, to reduce something to a powder, basically by pulverizing, grating it, or like, that's just the horrible, I don't want to be on my grind if that's what it takes. And the same thing with hustle. Hustle is to force someone or something to move hurriedly or unceremoniously in a specified direction, to obtain by forceful action or persuasion, to crowd or push roughly, to convey forcibly or hurriedly, to sell something to or obtain something from someone by energetically and especially underhanded activity. So no, I don't want to be on my hustle. I don't want to have to swindle anybody out of anything or, you know, partake in underhanded activity. So be careful with the words that you choose to use over your life. So yeah, based on those two definitions, grind and hustle, I don't want to partake in either one of those two activities. So, you know, I would rather take a peaceful connection with spirit where I can be led, where I can be guided on how it is that I'm to obtain my dreams, my desires, the things that I want to create in this world. I would rather be guided than have to grind something to a pulp to find the solution, or to have to swindle somebody or take by forcible action, whatever the hustle definition was, right? It's like I would rather have that connection and have that peace and that serenity and that leading and that guiding that I know is going to lead me towards soul fulfillment. Because I trust and believe that my intuition and my guidance and that God power within me, God is going to lead me to what is going to quench my soul. And so I would rather pay attention to that and connect with that and allow that to lead me forward than try to hustle my way through life or try to grind until I get what it is, get it, which is what I talk about in the paper. So anyway, I realize this is definitely getting lengthy. So tune in for part 2 next week. And I ended it by saying, if you are that person that is struggling, you know, with your mental struggles or with your, you know, the things that stress you out, or if you are struggling with finding your passion or finding your purpose or finding the things that really truly drive your soul, you know, try to find some moments within your life to start centering yourself and being quiet within yourself. That for me took a couple of years before I actually found, you know, before I was actually able to quiet that internal noise enough. Hopefully it doesn't take that long for you. So I just encourage you whenever you can, every single moment. We all have alone moments, even if it's only long enough to be on the toilet. And I understand some mommies out there don't even have that. I get it. But when you do have those moments that you can steal them, tune in next week. I'll give more info on what to do with those little precious moments when you have them. Until then, I'm sending you lots of love, lots of light. And I'll be on this journey right along with you, trying to find my way as well. So love you, sending lots of love. Take care.